Hello and welcome to this basics video on using the Dindo software. So today in this video we're going to look at some of the basic principles of Dindo, give you a foundation in using the software and hopefully take you from never having seen the software before to being able to be proficient in using it. We may not be able to touch on every feature today in Dindo, but we'll look at the main ones that will give you a good understanding of how the software works. I would imagine if you're watching this video, you are either a trial user who's just about to start a trial, and you are somebody who has moved to an organization who already has Dindo, or your organization has just purchased Dindo, and you're all just looking to see how it works and understand and learn how to use the system, like I said, from a point where you've never seen the system before, and that's what this video is going to do. So we'll get stuck straight into it. The first thing to say here is Dindo is an online platform. So you open Google Chrome, you go to the Dindo website, which is dindo.co, and top right you hit login, and that'll bring you into the system. So you can access it from anywhere. Once you have access to the internet and you have the access to Google Chrome, you have your login and you have your password. You can get into the system. This is the screen that will meet you when you open the system for the first time. Now I have some jobs. If you are a trial user, you'll have no jobs, but I have some in here so that we can use them during this process. So let's take a stock of what we see here and just a bit of the lay of the land. So we have here in front of us, like I said, a list of jobs. As we click on the different jobs, so London House, for example, you'll start to see different information on the right-hand side. So on different ones, you'll have totals and you'll have cost per meter squared. You'll have quote, start date and end dates, names. If you have an address that is applicable, it'll turn up down the bottom right. On the left-hand side, then we just have some tabs that run through different kind of global features for the software. It's kind of at a very, very top level. What can we do? So the first tab is just obviously a symbol. Then we have this job list, which is where we are now. So if we are somewhere else and we want to get back to the job list, we simply just click on the first tab. Next one down is tasks. We'll do some tasks later, but just to be aware that they are here at a global level across all jobs, across all employees. You can see all the tasks that are due or overdue for the company at this level. Next one is templates. So as the name suggests, this is where your templates are housed. So when you create jobs or already have jobs and you want to pull information from, you can use the templates to do that. We're actually going to use one in our example today where we will be pulling from a template to help us input information faster rather than having to type everything in. If you want to create a new one, you can come in here and do that with a new or import from Excel. Next is price lists. Again, it's something we will look at in more depth as we go through, but this is where they are all stored. This is where you create the new ones. You can have any amount of price lists and you're able to obviously then pull that information into the job. And one of the things we'll look at later is how that all connects through. So you've used a price from the price list and then you come back and change that. How does that affect the price? What are my options around that? We'll look into that. Next is just a contact list. So that is just a list of the contacts clients that you have worked for in the past. So that's from an organizational standpoint in regards to finding phone numbers and emails. That's very handy. You can search and find for them and filter for them. You also have like where they are. You'd also get a list of the jobs that they're associated with. So for example, if I click on here, I know that this client is involved for these two projects. So you can really easily see how important the client is to you. You can really easily see if they are working, if you are a very large organization and you're working on one job, someone else is working on another job and you don't realize that they're actually for the same client, you might be able to save a bit of time and money in that scenario. Suppliers is connected to your price lists and you can connect certain suppliers with certain price lists. And that lets you then, if you use that price list, print a report based on what you are ordering from that supplier. So it's just another way of control and the report that you can do. You don't have to use it that way, but it is available for you. Again, you can click on it and you can see what price list they are associated with. Next is the coding. We're not really going to do coding too much in this video. This is more to do with something that's a bit more advanced, but again, I just want to make you aware of it. Coding is to do with resorting the job into a different order. It will be used for things like the first one I've pulled up there, LMSP. So you have a job in a certain order and you want to pull all the labor together and all the material together. You can do that using the coding. You put the associate code next to the item and then you ask the system to resort the job. Other examples where it would be used for cost codes, for accounting purposes, for trade packages, pulling things together into like carpentry work, concrete work going out. can all be done through coding. So you have the original order of your job in its trade form, and then you have the codes that come. You can use the codes then to resort that into a different order. Conversions is to do with changing a quantity. So a lot of times we'll do quantities, and we will do examples of this, so don't worry if you don't follow 100% at this point, but a lot of times you'll have a quantity and you need to convert it to something. The most obvious is when you're doing like tiling a floor, you draw the area, it is 10 meters squared, but how many tiles is in that? You use the conversions to do that multiplication. Similar for you're doing a vertical area, how many bricks or blocks are in that, you use the conversions to do that. This is just where you store those multiplications, so you don't have to think of them off the top of your head, and you can just pull them into the job and it'll do the multiplication across for you. Below then you just have a support contact. You can use that, or you can come to us directly depending on who you're talking to. And obviously down at the bottom you have your own name and then settings. So what that'll let you see is just job profile, which is just around you, some other stuff around subscriptions and users, passwords. And this is all default settings for your company. So job preferences, report settings will give you like logos and stuff. Subscription is to do with how many users you have. You can create teams and users, all control. You will see less of that if you are not an admin user. I see all these options because I'm an admin user, but if you're not an admin user, I think you only get 3. So like if you're an admin user and need to add a user, you go to the subscription tab, you tick on that, and you can add users that way, or you can control the users. If someone leaves the organization, you can control it through the users tab. If you want to set up a team, and what a team will let you do is, in conjunction with the tasks, you can send a message to multiple people in one go. So let's say you have an estimating team and you need to tell them all the same thing at the same time. You can do that through setting up a team, put all the estimators into that team and use it through the tasks. Okay, so we'll go back to the job list and we'll start to build some stuff so that we have some examples that we can use. So one thing we can do here is we can filter as well, something I didn't cover. So if I'm searching this list, you just click the filter and you just start to type things. So for example, if I can't find a job, but I know it was at 1, 2, 3, it'll start to come back. Similarly, I can go 4, it'll come up. You can filter Q date, client, job number, who created a job, all the ones created by Peter, all the ones created by, Roger, whatever you want to do there. So it's just, the list could get quite long, quite fast. So it just gives you that options under the filter tab. Okay. The button we're really interested in though is to the left of that, which is new. So we'll click on new. Okay, so the first screen comes up here is just about creating the job. You have 5 steps to creating the job: client, job details, choose a template if you want to, job settings, and then just a summary of what it's shooting back to you. This is really simple, basic stuff. If it has a little star, it means it has to be filled in. All the others don't have to be filled in. So you can burn through this as quick as you can. They can all be changed afterwards. So if you get something wrong, it's at the end of the world. At this point, you can change somebody's name, you can change a budget, you can change a VAT rate, whatever. So I'm just going to pick a client off that I already know. It's going to fill in his details. I go next. I give the job a name, so we'll just go training job. I give it a budget, although that's not mandatory. And you have your currency. You go on, you can fill in dates and addresses, are all very self-explanatory. Job site address will give you that Google Maps thing down the bottom right that I was showing you a minute ago. Again, if that's important or relevant, I don't know. It might give you an idea on getting how difficult it is to get to in and around major roads, minor roads, if you are having large trucks or anything in the area. The interesting one though is floor area, because this will obviously lead towards your cost per meter squared. So if you know the floor area at this point, you can type it. So I could type 400 or 4,000 here, and then as my price goes up, obviously I'll get a different cost per meter squared. But I'm not going to do that because there is an alternative way, which is to draw it, which you can use a plan to actually draw the ground floor area, set that to be the GFA, and then it'll figure out a cost per meter squared. That's really handy, obviously, if you don't know it. The ground floor area, also if it's across multiple plans or multiple drawings or whatever, you can have multiple areas adding together to give you a total GFA, and then obviously that'll lead towards a more accurate cost per meter squared. Here is what do we want to start the job with. Okay, so we could go create a blank job, which is just absolute blank job. More than likely, you're going to type in everything. You want to build it from scratch, and that's kind of where you're starting from. You have alternatives though. You hit the drop down. You can go from any job that you've previously used. You can pull in all the information from that. You can go from a template, or you can go from a price list. So you can pull from these areas and start a job with a huge amount of information. A lot of the stuff we do is repetitive. We might have done a job very similar before. We just really need to pull it together and change certain specifications in it. Obviously the drawings will be slightly different and the quantities might be different, but the actual structure of the estimate would be the same. So that's all here. So either pulling from a job, pulling from a template, or pulling from a price list. You can pull at this point from as a total, or you can start the job blank. And when you're in the job, you can actually piecemeal, which means you could pull from an existing job, pull from a bit from a template and a bit from a price list, and you can merge them all together within there if you want to. For our example, I'm going to go with template and I'm going to go with a standard home. And you can see here, you can tick what trades you want or don't want. That'll make a bit more sense when we get in and how it's structured, but you can certainly, I don't need the plaster for this. I don't know why that would be, but you might untick that and say, I don't want that. I'm going to pull that from somewhere else. Like I said, you might be piecemealing it together with different templates or different jobs. You can see I have preliminaries as my first trade. You can do that, or there is a separate tab in the system for preliminaries. I'm going to do both because I want to show you how it works. They're relatively similar. There's a small difference in them, but you wouldn't do both. You do one or the other, but I'm going to show you both just to give you an idea of what they do. So they're all ticked, so I'm happy with that. I go next. And then just job configuration. So this is just to do with, do I want to add a code file? We're not doing coding today. You know, what's my profit? I'm going to say let's say it's 0 on the prelims, but 10% on everything else. What is our currency? What is our VAT? What is our default settings? So what is our default height for the wall when we go to draw like a vertical area? What is our default depth for volume? This is all here. You can change this here. You can obviously change that globally. Like I said earlier on in the settings in the bottom left, you can change this globally across it. And you can change it individually in the job, and you can change it individually for the shape. So absolute complete control. Even if you draw it with the wrong height, it can be retroactively changed afterwards as well. So it's not the end of the world what these are, but it might save you some time as you get used to the system being able to say, well, most of these walls are going to be this height. So that's going to save me some time if I set it to start at that. And then there might be some other ones that are a little bit different and I'll change them individually. I'll just leave it the way it is for the minute for what we're doing today. That's fine. So what we're seeing here is just a summary of all the things we've ticked, okay? So that's good. We can just say, yeah, we're happy with that, or we can go back and fix things we want now. Even after creating it, we can still go back and fix things. There's no problem with that. So we create the job, it's created, and we're brought straight into the estimate level of the job. So loads of information has popped up on the screen. It's very different, but just the thing to take away at the moment is we are in the job now. So we are in the job we created called training job. You have a bunch of tabs across the top: details, estimate, prelims, variations, plans, reports, tasks, and settings. And that's what we're going to run through. Down the left, obviously, you have your trades. This all came from the template that I created. So all this text here has come in because I used a template. This would all be blank if I had chosen blank job. So let's just run through the tabs at the top first, because I think they're the easiest thing to understand. So we'll go, first one is details. So this is really just, what did we just fill in a minute ago? Back at us, you know. So here's all the stuff we filled in. So let's say my budget was 3 million. Let's edit that. Maybe it should have been 4 million. Update, and it'll change. So you've the little edit button here. You can say quote date, job start date, whatever you want in there. So that's, again, like I said, you can go back and you can change anything. Next is the estimate screen, where you spend most of your time in the estimate screen, filling it in. Between that and the takeoff screen, I would imagine those would be you'd be going back and forth between the two quite a lot, and that's where you spend most of the time. And this is where the crux of it is. You fill in your trades, the breakdown of that, your quantity by rate equals your total. The prelims is the prelims tab on its own. So like I said, you can do it as the first trade, or you can just do it as its own thing in here. I've done it, like I said, both. So we'll see why you would do that later. It's just to do with reports, really. You can do a report that is prelims on its own. You can do profit separately, like I did, where the prelims has no profit and everything else does. You know, things like that you have more control over when it's individualized away from the other trades. Variations we won't do today. It's just to be aware you can do them if the job has been closed and is won, but there is a variation, you can do them through that tab. Plans and takeoff we will be in a second, obviously. It's given out to me at the moment because I have no plans to take off from, but that's where you would do it. The thing to note about the plans and takeoff tab is you can push it to a second screen. So I'll just show you how to do that now. If we come off it for a second, if you right click on it and go open in new window, the plans and takeoff will then be separate window that you can then drag and drop onto your second monitor if you have it set up. So the thing to be aware is the system is not better or worse for that. It is designed to work across one screen. I will completely work across one screen in this video, but if you have two monitors and you prefer to work like that, have the estimate on one screen, have the takeoff on the other, if you're used to that, that's all you do. Right click, open a new window, drag that over and put it on the other screen. No problems at all. The reports obviously we'll look at later, which is just our reports, summary report, trade report, everything you could think of. Tasks is individual for this job. So we looked at tasks globally a minute ago. This is specific, so we'll do some tasks and show you the difference between a task and a comment when we get there. And settings is just more default stuff. What is our default rounding? What is our default height? What is our default stuff? So again, stuff we could change if we wanted to at this point. So let's hide the comments for a minute because we'll come back to that, and let's go back to the estimate. And then we'll look at directly the structure we're looking at here, right? So I'm in prelims, and then this is what I see. I click on brickwork. This is the breakdown I see. I click on carpentry. This is the breakdown. So the heading is on the left, trade is on the left. When you click on it, the right-hand side populates with the information about that, right? You'll see it has its own button bar at the top. Really self-explanatory, you know, add a line below, add a line below, above, delete the line we're on, do a subtotal, which we'll do later. These two are pulling from price lists, jobs, and templates. So as I talked about earlier on, I have this pulled from that template, which was mostly a standard home, but if there's something else I need from a different template or a different job, a different trade, a roofing trade that isn't here, a painting, or there is a painter one there, something different, you could pull from somewhere else, again, to save you typing. Next one across is styles. So that's to do with you're seeing blue text and you're seeing black text. So at the moment I'm using blue text as like a container or a header or a separator, and then I have blue text for my items, which will have quantities by rates equals totals. You've loads of different styles. So for example, you can come up and change that. You know, you can have them as yellow and underlined. You could have them as bold, whatever suits you, you know, just to stick to that, to make it clean for yourself. I think this is the most visually easy thing to do when you've separators that are blue. So for me, blue would be like a head 1. If you think about it from a word context, you know, they've head 1 and head 2s and head 3s. So you might go blue head 1, yellow head 2, head 3 if you need it as bold, something like that, whatever suits you. Add new comment, we're going to do that later, but that's about adding tasks and comments. Find unpriced item just moves you down the lines to find whenever there's a line that isn't priced. So if you're pricing the thing, that's what it's about. And the last one is just search, which is pretty cool. So for example, if the estimate is quite big and this trade is quite big and you can't find the 70mm internal walls, you just type 70, or you can't find the 450s, it brings you to the 450s. So it's pretty good at that. When you're doing an example that's really, really long, or trying to find a description that you can't find, that is where you do it. So we're going to start to add some stuff in now to allow us to do some takeoff. So we're going to add a trade. So that's just a little plus here to give you an idea how that's done. You come in and you go, let's do a roof, and it's going to be the same markup as all the other ones, and go add. You can individualize that. Like you can come to the steel and hit the little option at the end of the steel line, which are these 3 dots, and say, well, I'm going to edit that. And I'm going to say, well, steel is only going to be at a 5% and update. So, you know, I have an overall that said like make it 10, but then I've come in and I've changed it. So you can do that. You can individualize it as well. So if we come back to the roof section, let's just start to type some really basic stuff so we have something to work with. So we go roof, we give it a style. It's going to be blue, and we'll just say roof tiles. Really basic, okay? The next thing we want to look at is the result column. So it's the first column you come to, and it's an important column. So what am I trying to return here is an important question for yourself. And then picking it off. So when a roof, it's going to be area by pitch. But if it's something like a skirting, it'll be length. If maybe it's floor tiles, it's area, vertical area, you're painting an outside. You know, what am I going to draw that's going to return here for my result? So for me, it's area by pitch. Picking a result is really important. If you don't pick a result, the item is not available for takeoff. And what that means is it won't turn up in the takeoff pane. So I'm going to do a separate one, right? I'm going to do roof tiles 2. But I'm not going to give it a result because I want to show you that roof tiles 2 will not be available for takeoff. only the one that says roof tiles is. So that's an important distinction, and it's something that some people don't get straight away. So I want to hammer that home, make sure it's okay. The other thing to notice is the unit column, you can see here, was filled in automatically. So that can be overwritten, and that's important, right? It will give you the unit of the most obvious, so area meters squared, volume meters cubed. But obviously with the conversions we talked about, with factors, with multiplications, you might not be pricing per meter squared. So you can come in and you can say number, you can come in and you can say each, you can come in and say whatever, you can brick, whatever. So you can change the unit simply by double clicking on it and then typing in whatever you want, because you know you're going to change it from a meter squared to a per tile or a per brick price. So that's a basic overview of the trades. What we'll move into now is the takeoff. And again, we'll look at that tab and we'll have a little lay of the land. So we just click plans and takeoff. So it gives out to us that we don't have any takeoff. So we go PDF, pick our plan, go OK. Okay, so all I did was pick a plan, go to a location on my PC, find the plan, open it up. Anywhere on your PC. Thing to note is it's now in the system. You can delete it. I could delete that off the system now and that would be fine as well. So this PDF was made up of 2 pages. I do not want the external view, the elevation plan. I only want the drawing. So we untick page 2 and we say upload. And up goes the file. So one of the things you can do here, which I think is really handy, is you have all these options about renaming one, the plan, but also the plan group. So I could the plan group here is on the left, and that is given the name of the first plan that comes in, but I could rename that to be structural or superstructure. And then I could add more plans in this group by going upload PDF into the superstructure. Then I could create another one here below for, substructure, and another one there for first floor, second floor. You could do it that way. You could do a specific. So this lets you really group the plans in a way that makes sense to you when you're going through it, especially on the larger jobs if you are doing the bigger ones. The other one thing is you can change the name of the job just with the edit button here. So that can be quite handy because the names that come through can be quite difficult, all very, very similar. You could put a date on it as well. That could something you could do to give yourself a more better understanding of when you got this plan, how new it is, how old it is. If we want to go into the plan and do takeoff on it, we just click the little open takeoff button here. And now we're in the plans takeoff ready to go. So the first thing on this plan is it has no scale, right? So this is a PDF. It has no inbuilt scale, so it's asking us to scale the system. It's giving out a bit, look, there's no scale. If you draw a line, I have no idea how long it is, what do you want to do? So you have 2 options. You have enter scale, which is set it based on information you've been given on the plan, how big the page is and what is the scale. 1 is to 183 is what we've been given here. Is that always correct? I don't know. It's up to you to check that. I would always, if I was doing that, I would do a check afterwards. I would do a line or a couple of lines to make sure that I'm happy that the scale I've been given is correct. The alternative is just to draw a line and tell it how long it is, which is measure scale, which is what I'm going to do here to show you how it's done. Scale drawing. So what you want to do is you want to find a line, a point to point where you can say from here to here is this long, okay? So to zoom in here, what I'm going to do is I have a mouse with a wheel on it, okay? And when I roll the wheel towards the screen, I zoom in. When I roll the wheel away, I zoom out. So I think that's really easy. So I do recommend having a mouse with a wheel. You do have options up here for zoom in and out with this, and you do have a zoom window which lets you drag an area, and I might do one of them later. But I think the wheel makes it a lot easier. So if we come in and we find a spot, we're going to go from here, and we're going to go to there, and we're going to say 3,000 millimeters. Okay? So you're left clicking on each point. You just click one point, click the next point. Okay, well, how long is that line? It's 3,000 millimeters. So that's scaled now. So we can zoom out, like I said, with the minus here. We can do a zoom window by dragging a shade there like that. Lots of stuff like that. Zoom in. If we want to move left and right, what you want to do is you want to left click but hold. So instead of clicking and clicking, you just click and drag. Click and drag. And you can roll then with the wheel, and you can click and drag and zoom in with the wheel. So that all becomes very easy, very natural as you move through the system more and more. But let's take another stock of all the buttons on the screen, because this is quite a busy screen and we want to make sure that everybody knows what we're looking at. So on the left here, if I just collapse all this up, this has come from our estimate, okay? So for example, here's the roof we made. trade, and then the item that we made with the result. But that's the same for every one of them. All the stuff under plaster, all the stuff with carpentry. So all the takeoff we need to do has come through. Notice, as I said to you, roof tiles 2 did not come through because I did not give it a result in the estimate. Therefore, it doesn't come through. So that's just proving that logic on the way through, okay? In the middle then, obviously, you have your takeoff, but you also have a lot of buttons. So from left to right, that's just a select button. The next one is a deduction. If I turn that on and do any takeoff with it on, the figure will be a minus figure. You can overwrite that later in both directions if you turn it on by accident or if you forget to turn it on. But when you're doing the takeoff, that's the little scissors is your deduction for your minus figure. We've looked at the zoom options already. You've seen I have snapping, which is corner latch, which is when I get near the corner, I get those orange squares and they kind of vibrate when I get near the corner. You can turn that off if the drawing is too busy and you can't get to the thing that you want to point to, or it's not a corner. The next one then, if I turn it on, that is ortho. And that's to do with locking you to 90 degrees. So you can only go from where you've clicked at a 90-degree angle. So left, right, up or down. So a lot of drawings will be left, right, up or down, Next one across, so this is a small button bar, and this affects whatever is shown in the below button bar. So what you have is annotate, which is to do with text on screen, and we'll do that later. Takeoff, which is, as the name suggests, doing the takeoff. And configuration, which is what we did a second ago, which was scale. So that's the scale drawing. Now, if I do drawing now, and I rescale the plan, it's perfectly fine. There's no problems with that. You can... you can do that and the drawings will adjust with you. Obviously you want to get the scale right at the start, but if it is wrong, I don't think it's the end of the world. You can, like I say, rescale. The other options here are rotate. So for example, this drawing is a little bit awkward. Maybe I want to rotate so it fits better on the screen. So I rotate it a bit right and it just fits better on my screen because screens are not tall, they're wide. Other buttons here are search, which is pretty cool. You can come in and you can search the document for a certain word. So like if I wanted to find the garage, it shows me where the word garage is. You can click on it. So if it's, again, a really busy thing and you're looking for a really specific, I don't know, an electrical junction with a really specific name and it's a hotel and you just can't find it, you can search the drawing for certain words, certain numbers, certain symbols, whatever it might be. And then you can just print what you see in the viewport here with this, which is really handy. If you've done takeoff or if you're questioning takeoff, you can imagine with the annotation that we're going to show you later, you could point to something right on the right across the screen on the plan, print it to PDF and ask somebody a query about it quite easily, even though they don't have Dindo. The right hand side then is drawings, which is just a list of the drawings. We only have one. Shapes that we're going to do in a minute, and text, again, it's just all the annotation, being able to turn it off, turn it back on and delete it. Okay, so that's the lay of the land for the takeoff pane, but let's start to actually do some takeoff so we have an idea of what we want to do here, right? So we'll just close the roof one, and most simple one we're going to do is first we're going to start with some skirting, because I think that's the easiest thing to explain. If we go to the takeoff section here, you have these buttons which are different types of takeoff. So that's doing a square, that's doing a polyline that closes, that's doing a single line, that's for doing lines that go around corners, and this is for count. These will change based on what you tick you want to do takeoff. For example, if I tick the skirting, the count disappears because I can do skirting that closes or skirting that doesn't close. So I can do a length anyway. If I change that and if I pick an area, it'll only show me takeoff tools that let me do an area, because an area has to close. Similarly to a volume, the shape you draw has to close in some way so that it can complete the volume, okay? So those will all change depending on what you tick. If I tick a count on its own, you're just going to get the count feature. So that'll be dynamic as you're moving through. As you tick different things, it's a dynamic button bar is what it's called. So they'll change all the time. So we just pick a skirting. I'm going to pick the most obvious thing, which is one line, click from one point to another, and then close it, and then finish the shape. And then you'll get the options for colors, okay? So don't overthink this too much. It is just colors. It is just picking what color do you want your takeoff to be. You can get fancy with it if you are a larger organization with multiple people. You can have you can dedicate colors to certain people so that you can really easily see who's done what takeoff. Where that comes into play is because this is an online collaborative software, you could have multiple people working on this plan, doing this takeoff in different cities at the same time. If you're doing that all of a sudden you're going to start seeing takeoff pop up because other people might be doing that. So what you want to do is say, well, there's Peters, it's green, or there's Rogers, it's blue. You know, that's one way of doing it. The other way I've seen people do it is, you know, they do all their lengths in yellow and they do all their areas in blue and they do all their volumes in green. So that can be a way of helping you differentiate different takeoff that you've done as well, if you want to. But really it is just 4 preset colors that you can switch between quickly and pick whatever one you want to show your takeoff. So once you've picked your color, you can just come into where you want to draw the line. I'm going to do absolute basic principle one here, which is just one straight line to show you. So we've ticked the item here, we've picked our drawing tool, picked our color, we go from one side, left click, down to the other, left click. And that shape, because I picked do one line, all I do is click and it's done, okay? But where does all that information go is, if you see the drop down will now drop down for us, and we can see the shape, okay? So the shape there is 3.704 meters, that line, okay? If we want to add to that, we leave it ticked, and let's try it slightly different. We'll go for the polyline and go around the corner. So if we want to do this, something like, we want to click here and here. And you can see here, I still have it going, so I left click to finish on that shape. So that I went around the corners, slightly green there, and you can see that's gone into shape 2. So I've shape 1, which was just a line I drew here, and then shape 2, which is a dark green, which I've done around in the corners there. So if we want to follow that back to the estimate screen, we have to use this little link here, okay? So this is a takeoff we've done. Let's see what it did to the estimate when we did it, right? So if we click on the link, we'll go back to the estimate and it'll highlight, you can see it here, the line where that takeoff was applicable. It was applicable on this line here, okay? What you'll see is the total, and you'll see a little symbol. The little symbol means that there is takeoff or dimensions or something done in behind this number. So there are multiple things adding up to make this number. If you click on the symbol, you'll see every quantity cell behind it has a quantity sheet. The sheet has 2 tabs. One is for dims and one is for shapes. Dims is just manually building up the quantity. Shape results are your takeoff. So shape 1, shape 2, 3.704, 12.065 have come from the takeoff. They're being added together to give me 15.769. The one beside it is a multiplication. So that is the takeoff number. We're gonna maybe multiply that by a conversion or a factor. So that's why you have another, that's why you have a matching number beside it. This one could change, but we'll look at that later. For the moment, what you just need to take away is this number, that it is a turquoisey color, that behind it, because it has this little symbol, is your shapes results, and those are your 2 shapes below. You can give them different names in here if you want to. You can multiply by changing the number of, if there's 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. You can turn it into adduction by ticking it if you want to. To go back to the takeoff, you can use the same link. You can see you have this little chain link at the bottom, and I click on it and I go straight back to where it is. So you can either go forward or backwards from the estimate to the planned takeoff really, really easy. You can really easily follow that audit trail of, you come down to a number in 6 months time, you're looking at a job and you're like, God, how did I get to that? What shape drew that? You just scroll down to the estimate, find it, and use the little link, and it'll open the takeoff for you. It'll show you the shape straight away. So it's giving you that audit trail and that control of, oh yeah, that's how I did that shape. So you're not having to remember pretty much anything. You're really just using the stuff that you've created to follow through all the way. So let's do something a bit more complicated then. So that was really easy. That's flat. That's a length, right? So let's do the one we did earlier on, which was roof. Okay, so we want to go with the roof tiles. So same process. We tick the one we want to do. We go over to the takeoff. We choose the tool. We pick a color. That's fine. The difference this time is it's a roof tile, so there's an angle on this area that we want to do, okay? Yeah, it's not a perfectly flat thing that we're doing, so we need to be able to adjust for that, okay? You're looking straight down at the plan. You can't draw vertical area, you can't draw that height. Volumes, you can't draw the depth, and angles you can't draw. So you have to be able to input that information, which you can do with this little cogwheel here. If you click the cogwheel, you'll see your additional information here for the shape that you're about to do. For us, we have a 20-degree pitch on the roof, so that's what it is. You can change it to 25, whatever at this point, but the default one that we'd set for the job was 20 degrees. So I'm happy with that. If it's different, you change it here, okay? Minimize that down, and we just draw our shape. So again, we come to a corner, it latches onto the corner. we then go to the next corner, etc., etc. To close, we right click. So again, just to follow it through, once selected, roof tiles, shape 3, 55 meters squared, follow the link back, brings us to the shape, hit the drop down, hit the shape results, there it is there, 20-degree pitch. You could change that to 25 and you'll get a different number. Okay, back to 20, 55. Okay, so you can affect that afterwards as well. So we want to go back to the shape, we hit the little link, and it's brought us back through. So that is the smoothness of working at one screen. If you were across two screens, obviously you wouldn't have to do that. You know, it wouldn't be flicking back and forth. It would just be highlighting on the screen what you're clicking on. So that is a roof area by pitch. If we look at now we'll look at a vertical area, something again just different. We'll go for brickwork. We'll do the outside face. Again, we'll pick our drawings. We'll go for yellow. We might hide everything out of the way by hitting this little eyeball. We haven't really looked at shapes, but we'll just hide everything with the little eyeball. And we'll say our walls, are we happy that our walls are going to be 2.4? Yeah, we could change that to 2.7, whatever we wanted to do. We're happy with that though. And what we do is we simply just click in the corners. Nice and quick. I'm going very rough here. It's just to speed up a bit. You could zoom in, obviously, and I can zoom in and I can click and hold to move as I'm going around if I want to. So you can zoom in if you want to, you can zoom out. I'm rolling the wheel out, and again, just left click to finish, okay? So that shape closed, but one of the things I wanted to do with that shape was the GFA. We talked earlier on about typing a GFA, but we can also draw a GFA. So that is the ground floor area roughly of what we want to do. If we come into the shapes, go down to the shape we just created, which was shape 4, and you'll see you have these little dots. Click on them, go edit. So at this point you can change the name, so it could be external ENV or external blockwork, whatever. But this is the important part. Include area in results in GFA, and then you go update. So that area now is used to calculate our cost per meter squared. We could have typed it, we didn't, we use that. You could use multiple shapes, like I said, you just tick them all and it'll add them together to give you that GFA, which obviously then counts towards your cost per meter squared. So as I mentioned, we haven't really looked at this shapes tab thing. Everything we've been doing so far is just naturally going into ungrouped shapes, and that's a fine way to work. If you just want to throw them in there and do that as schedule, perfect. But you can be more diligent with it, especially again, if you're multiple people working across this job, you might want to be more diligent with it, depending on the amount of time you have. So for example, here, ungrouped shapes is fine, but let's change it and we'll go plus, and let's say we go DS, and we go, the prefix on it is DS, and it's a combination of different types of results, okay? So this then maybe is my group, that any time I do takeoff, because you could have multiple people here, but my takeoff goes into this group, so I know what I'm doing, okay? So let's do a different type of result. We haven't done a count yet, so let's do that. Let's find a door, and we'll tick the option for the door. And you can see our only drawing tool is count. When you do a door, you have these multiple symbols, which is really nice, which you can pick. So let's just pick the top one. The DS is selected on the right hand side. So when I do any takeoff, even though it's counted, is still a takeoff, it will go into that. So let's do 5 doors, okay, randomly. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And something that catches some people out sometimes is you still have to right click to close a count. You'll see nothing has happened here, nothing has happened over here until I right click, because I have to right click to get the thing to close. The reason for that is it gives us the ability to come back and delete one, which is what I'm going to do now, as if I made a mistake. So we'll just right click, and you'll see in the drop down I have 5 doors, and on the drop down here I have 5 doors. Okay, so what I was talking about there is editing shapes. Okay, you have the ability to edit shapes as well. So editing a count is removing one that you put in by accident, or editing a shape is moving a corner. For example, this corner top right here looks a bit off to me, so let's fix that. So we'll go and click select on the button bar, top left, and you can do a couple of things. You can click on the shape over here on the right, and you'll start to get some edit tools. So you can change the color. I could change the color of the ticks, if I wanted to, or I could delete them as well, as another way of doing it. If I come up and you can see there, I have the little delete symbol. If I wanted to, the other thing, if I wanted to, so if we highlight this one, we'll get edit tools in the shape, which are just corners you can drag around and move. So let's put that back up so it's nice at a straight angle. You can move lines and delete lines and stuff like that with the edit tool. So you can either click on the shape over here on the right, or you can click on it in the viewport and the same thing will apply. Really just about editing the shape. So one of the things we've done so far is kept it very basic. Okay, we've gone one object at a time. Right, I've ticked one thing and done takeoff. So let's say we want to do multiple things and do takeoff. Okay, so let's again hide everything out of the way. Just to make it easy for us to view on screen. Nothing other than just moving it out of the way. We will then add a new group. We'll call it tiling. So this might be another way of separating everything out. You might want to put all your tiling together, you know, in a group so that you know where it all is. And again, it's easy to find. But what we want to concentrate on is we have two here that we could do, but we can do them together. You can tick multiple items to do takeoff. So a lot of times when doing shapes, they will correspond back to each other. So like when I was doing the skirting earlier on, what I could have done is the carpentry at the same time for the area of the room and the skirting of the room, you know? So what we're going to do here is floor tiles in a bathroom and wall tiles in a bathroom. We're going to keep it really simple though. So we take the two objects. They don't have to be in the same trade. They could be anywhere. We're going to use the rectangle tool just to show you how it works, more than it's probably the right tool to use here, but just to show you how it works. We'll pick a color. We'll make sure that our heights are okay. So for that, and that we're in the tiling section. Once we're happy with all that, we zoom in on the place we want to take off. With this rectangle tool, you pick top left and you go bottom right. Okay, similarly, you come up to maybe another one, and you don't have to go top left to bottom right. You could go the other direction as well, but it's just you pick one corner and you go to the opposite corner. What happens is both of these are filled in at the same time, as you can see. Because I had both of them ticked, both of them were two shapes, so you have two shapes in each. So again, that's just saving time. They ended up in the tiling group, so that's what we wanted them to be in. So that's multi-takeoff. The other alternative would be if you wanted to reuse a shape. So that's when you know that a shape needs to be done across multiple items. But if you don't know that a shape needs to be done across multiple items, for example, this shape that I created earlier on, this external, this is the outside perimeter of our building. So that applies to a lot of different objects and a lot of different items in our estimate. So I only ticked one, but I can still reuse it in other items simply by clicking and dragging it and dropping it into other items. Similarly, if I came to the concrete and I wanted to use this for the slab, I can click and drag and drop for the slab as well. So there were different result types. There was a vertical area, and then to a volume. If you want to affect the depth of that, you use the little chain link to go back to the item in the estimate and you can affect the depth. It will use the default depth that you have unless you change it in the estimate. So that's quite a simple thing. So if I go chain link and little object and shape results, depth of 0.01. So I can change that now. If I double click on it, maybe it's 0.25. Okay, and we go back using the little chain link back to the estimate report. So that's reusing, so multi-takeoff and reusing the shape. One last thing to kind of do on the takeoff is just deductions, which is quite an easy thing to do. If we come back to our carpentry example, and again, I'll just hide everything so it's easy for everybody to see on the screen. And again, we'll just draw a really basic kind of thing. So we'll just draw from here to, let's say, here. Okay, and you can see there, I've just drawn a line from there to there, but I want to make a deduction for this door. And this would be the same for a window or whatever. What you do is you just hit the little scissors. When you hit the scissors and you draw anything, it will be a minus figure. So I want to minus that. And you'll see you get a minus figure. And that transfers back into the quantity sheet and it shows it's a minus figure in the quantity sheet. So for deductions, it's the result, but with a minus. So for an area of a window, it's the area as a minus. That would be the window on the same shape. with the same tick option in the same item. So that's the basic principles of the takeoff. You know, we did a couple of with lengths areas, with pitch, we did vertical areas, we did volumes. We can't go through them all, but it should be enough that you can follow through with any type of result that you need. The other things to look at here are, if we come back to full screen, annotation, which we didn't look at. So if we click on that, well, annotation is just to put things on the screen. So you have text and text with an arrow. So if I just want to put text, I just click that here and I can start typing for that. So we'll just say text. Other thing is I can do again, you can change the color and you can pick green, and I can do text with an arrow. So that's really, really handy, especially if you're using that print option, right? So let's say that door, we can go click, first click, second click, and third click is the text, you know, door, question mark. Maybe you want to review the door, or you want someone to tell you something about the door. Maybe, is it a fire door? Is it not a fire door? Which way does it, you think the hinge is on the wrong side? Am I right? You know, stuff like that. Anything you can think of. So all that's under the text tab on the right hand side. And again, you can hide that with the little eyeballs, turning them on and off. Config we looked at. This is just a ruler. So if you want to check the length of something, but you don't want to do takeoff, you can just use that little ruler. And I know from here to here is 17.088. Grand. I'm not going to do takeoff, but I just wanted to know what that length was, because I wanted to double check something. Maybe you use that, would be a good thing when you do your scale, and then you want to double check what that is. Okay, let's move back now to the estimate, because we've created all these quantities and we're going to use them, right? So let's go into the estimate where we filled in a lot of stuff. So you can see there's our drag and drop one, was our concreter. There's our tiling ones. We have our quantities have come back. We know there's takeoff behind them because we have our little symbol. There's our brickwork one for our outside. If you notice with the brickwork one, you have what we did the takeoff for, but you also have a conversion, right? That's come from the template. It's already in there because we know that we're going to have to convert that meters squared to a per brick amount, okay? And you use the conversions, which is this button over here, quantity conversions, and you put it into this column, and it'll multiply by the quantity to give you a final quantity. You can also use the factor column, which just does multiplication. So for example, if I just put in, like, oh, I want to multiply that by 5, you just put in a 5. Depending on the rounding on that, it'll become that's rounding up to every 500 because that's in my conversion, because I can only buy these bricks 500 at a go. So all that is allowed for in the system. If we do one as an example, again, we'll just use our roof as our example here. We come to the roof tiles, we come over to the conversions, we click on the cell, we find the one that's relevant. This is just a dummy one I've set up. There's 4.3 tiles per meter squared. I said it's going to be 10% waste from doing corners and breakages, and we're going to round up, and we go, perfect. Take the one we want, in it goes. So now that's converting the 55 meters squared to 261 tiles, okay? So that is using the conversions or the factor to multiply the quantity to make a final quantity, because it's the final quantity that will be multiplied by our rate to give us our total. Now, sometimes they'll match because you don't have a conversion or a factor in there. If you're not using those columns, you can hide them just with the hide column, and you can just hide the factor there if you want to. If you're not using that column, to give yourself some space on the screen, although I think you have a lot of space on any screen with Dindo, it's quite well laid out. Other things you can do, let's say you want to do a subtotal for a couple of lines. You just highlight those lines. So you click on the first, shift click on whatever is the last one you want. I'm doing 2 here. You could do 5, you know, and then you just create subtotal. It inputs a line and adds up the totals for you down to here. You can change it. It just takes the first description as its title, but you can double click and clearly just change that to be whatever you want. It doesn't add in to give you, doesn't obviously double up then and put that into the totals. Other things you can do is you can do maths. So for example, I can come in here for this quantity and I could say, well, that's 5 plus 4 plus 8. And this one might be 5 times 6. So you can do maths on that. And obviously you can see that they have a little calculator function that lets them, you know, that was a sum, and then it gives you back what the sum was. So that's subtotals, quantity formulas. If we move then into the rate column, so a lot of the stuff we've done so far is really quantity based, take off, stuff like that. If we move across to the rate column, what we want to look at is the different types of rates we can do. So there are 3 different types of rates we can do, and then within one of them there are subcategories of 2. So the first and most obvious is just basic, 260 here, right? That's just typed in. If we take it out, it's black, means it's just been typed in. There's nothing special about it. We've just typed that number in. If we go down to our roof, same idea. We're just using this as a constant example, 250, just multiplies across, whatever it'll be. Okay, the other colors are this turquoise color and this green color. The turquoise color means that there's build-up behind it, the same way that can be build-up behind the quantity, right? So for every rate, you can have a rate sheet behind it, and you have this little symbol. So if I click this little symbol, I'll start to see the rate breakup. So this could be multiple items. I think a good example is in the doors, and we click it here. Okay, so these are all the objects that make up this door, and let's say we need 6 of those doors, for example. Okay, so you can see the breakup of it. These are all the objects, the hinges, the counter screws, whatever it might be. So you can build up the rate. That's when there's a color, a turquoise color and a symbol. It means there's something behind it. We can click on it and go into it. If you want to create one that isn't there, for example here, if we wanted to create one, we go right click and we go convert to rate sheet, which means it pushes, if there's nothing there, it just opens the rate sheet. If there's something there, it pushes it into the rate sheet so that you can build it up. Same with the quantities, you can right click and go convert to dim sheet, which gives you that. It's all there, you just have to tell it that I want to work in the sheet behind this one because I have to build this information up, okay? So that's why you right click and you create it. Within the so that is where you are building up for a specific object, and all those things add for one door, and the multiplication is quite simple. That's the price for door, and you have 6 of them, so it multiplies across. Where it becomes more difficult, and where we've added a feature that should help you, is if we come into something like the slab, and if we come in and let's say we blank out that cell, and we go right click and convert to rate breakup. So we have here 64 cubic meters on the slab, right? We want to price that, but we're not always going to get it in meters cubed. You're going to get price for labor that might be the guy's going to be there for a day. You're going to get a rental price for special wheelbarrows or compressors or whatever, and they're going to be priced per day. You don't get them in a price per meter squared. That's where the divider tool comes in. So for example, if I put in, let's say we have labor, I'll just say material, I'm just making these up, plant, right? And you've one day for him, and let's say he's 50 pounds, and he's also on a day, but he's more expensive, he's 65, maybe he's a supervisor. You know, you're ordering your 1 meters for every meters cubed of concrete, and now 65, we're just trying to make nice big numbers, even numbers, and your materials, again, you're hiring something for a day, and it's 125 pounds. Okay, but that's not a cost per meter squared. That's a total cost to do the thing, right? You have all these numbers here, you know? So to get that back to a cost per meter squared, you hit the divider tool. So you click there and you input what you want to divide it for. Most of the time, you will be dividing it by the quantity, so 64.35. But if there's another scenario, you can just do division manually with that. And you go update. And now you have a cost per meter squared, even though the things are made of days and labors, and you might have hours in there and different things. And you also have recognition of what you did, original total, what we divided it by, what it became. So that then allows you to check, and again, it's to do, like I said, audit trail it back all the time. The last type of rate is from the price list. So if we go back to our brickwork, and we'll see it here, it's green. If we hover over it, we'll get the details from where it's come from. You can use the link to go back to where it is by clicking on this button here, which will bring it to, I don't want to do it yet, but you'll just see all the details. I think this is a nice one, when it was last updated. So if it's a price you're using, when was it last updated, I think is a really good little feature. It just gives you an idea. Again, we'll go to our roof example and we'll do a price list here. So let's get rid of the silly rate that we have. Double click on the cell and you'll get the lookup rate option. Click the lookup rate option and it's say, okay, what price list do you want to be in? So we could go into demo price list and into the roofing section. And I just have 4 different tiles and different prices just as an example. We'll pick B. We'll pick B. And we'll go update rate. So again, it's green, but you can see our multiplication across 261 by 13. If we want to see that, we can go and say, show me that in the roof tiles. So now I've clicked on it. I've been brought back to the actual price list itself, and I'm looking at the price. What if somebody changes that? Well, one, they see that this price is being used somewhere already, okay? Somewhere in the system that's being used. Most of your rates will probably have that little link to say that it is being used. If they change the cost, so if I go, that becomes 14. So it was 13, it goes to 14. It doesn't automatically change everything because you don't want it to, right? If you've done a job 2 years ago and it's linked to the same price, you don't want to update the price now. The job is done, right? So what happens is, if we go back to the job this way, through the job list, the first thing you'll see is just a little warning to say, look, the prices that you used here have changed in the price list that you connected. Be aware of that. Click on the job and it'll tell you where that's all happened, okay? So if we have a look here, first message that comes up, something has changed. So in the roof trade, under the roof tiles, the current rate you have in the job is £13. It has since you've last been in the job, it's gone up to £14. Do you want to update it? And if you had multiples, you would be ticking and unticking the ones you want. For me, I'll go, yeah, sure, perfect, update it. And if we go back down to the roof section, it'll be 14 and it'll multiply across. Okay, so that's control of the price list. It's not a dumb feature whereby it just updates all the time. It again puts the user in control of the rate and the price list. Putting in the money, putting in the quantities, you're starting to see totals. And you're starting to see, as I move around, these little donut charts keep popping up. So what they are is, if we come in and hover over the word brickwork, you'll start to see a drop down and you'll see the details of the brickwork. So cost total, quote total, profit, what the markup was, and its percentage versus the entire job. So brickwork at the moment is 76.6% of the total job. So it gives you just a breakdown of what you want to do. You can also click this little icon at the end of the brickwork, 3 dots, and go edit. And you can say trade complete. This just literally visually puts a little tick on the trade for yourself. So that might be a message to you, might be to someone else, but it's just to say, don't go, that's done. So that might be just something for yourself if you need to. You don't have to do that. The main totals will be down the bottom right, where you can see, again, hover over donuts. So estimate profit at the moment is 7,007. No profit on the prelim, that's fine. So job profit then is still 7,007 because that's a combination of the two. What's the VAT? Cost per meter squared at the moment is 272, and then your different, again, donuts based on what you're trying to do will appear on the little pop up down the bottom right. So you can still see your cost at the moment. Our job's costing us this, and this is our job quote will be this, based on 2 things, based on markup and based on VAT. So one of the 2 more things to do here, which is tasks and reports. Okay, so tasks and reports, we'll go with tasks first, right? So what we can do is on any cell in the system, pretty much any cell, you can right click and go add a comment, which literally just puts something on it. So right, so I go check item and I go comment. So that is probably more than likely for myself. And I get a little yellow mark to say there's something here that you've put on it. You might want to check that. I can do that on a rate, comment, check price. Okay. And that's just a comment. It's just something that you can put a little tick on for yourself. If you go a step further and create a task, it adds a date and a calendar to it. So let's do that. So if I go right click on the next line and go comments, and I turn on the tasks feature, I can go check color for someone. Please check the color. Okay, now what I've got is I can assign it to a colleague and say, well, Peter, can you check this? And this needs to be done by tomorrow. And I go comment. And I close this. What you'll see is if I turn on the comments panel on the right, you'll start to see a list of all the comments that you need, and you can say this trade or all trades. So if I click on the one that I want to talk about, which is this one, which is the one I sent to Peter, it'll be yellow. It'll have a little tick to say it's done or not, and it'll have its own personal kind of IM. Peter can reply to me if he wants. The other important thing to say is Peter also got an email. So if I open up the email that's connected to that, which is this one, you'll see he got this email. Check color. Who sent it to him? David sent it to him. When is it due? Tomorrow. Okay, I need to check that. He opens it up. He clicks on the little link. It brings him straight to it in the job. What do I need to do? Why am I checking this? What's it about? So he goes straight into where that is and he can see what that's about. So that's again control around that kind of stuff. The other thing to do is you can do it to yourself. So for example, I'm doing this in the estimate screen. Let's go to the plans takeoff. Let's go back into our takeoff. Let's go down to our tiling, let's say. And if we take one of them and go comments, maybe I'm out on site and I need to check this takeoff, whatever it might be. And I want to assign it to myself tomorrow. And I go comment. So that will then be in my emails for me when I go in tomorrow, marked as unread, ready to go. So that's, again, another way of using it. So if you're just commenting and not tasking, there's no emails, there's no dates, there's no nothing. If you're using the tasks, you are getting it through a calendar and stuff like that. It's all in the tasks tab. Here for this job is all the lists for the ones that we've done here. So today, tomorrow, upcoming, so everything that needs to be done for this job in the tasks will be listed here, and you can see if we've gone past any. We can sort them by who they're for, who made them, when were they made, all that sort of thing. That's job specific under this tab. Company wide, it's top left, and you can see them up there as well. So again, it just adds into the collaboration in the software when you're doing the tasks and the comments. And then the last thing I wanted to show you are the reports. So all the reports are generally structure-wise in the system are, just close comments, are the same. So you have, straight summary. You would have, if there's a number of pages, you can go through them, siphon through them here. There's only one page in the summary. Anything you can change is top right, where you hit the little cog wheel. And you can say quote date, you can display the cost. So for example here, I'm not displaying the cost here, I'm just displaying the VAT and the total. But if I was doing it more of an internal report for somebody, I might want to show the cost as well. And that'll come through. And if we scroll down, so that might be internal for senior partners or whatever, to say, look, this is what it's actually, this is what it's costing us, this is our profit, our margin, whatever it might be. If we then, we can take that out. We can also force it to get to a total as well if we feel like it's, we want to get to 90,000 here, and we can go apply. So it'll force it to that number. So that, and then obviously the VAT on top of that gets to 108,000. So you can force it to that number and it'll be prorated back. They're all pretty similar to that. They all have a cogwheel, just depends on what you're trying to do. Rate breakup sheets is list your breakups. Prelims sheets is just this prelims tab on its own. Trade package, full package, they're all that. If you want to export any of them, you're hitting the little drop down here for export, and you're picking PDF, which is PDF document, Excel, Word. So especially if you're not working with somebody using Dindo, you can still send them reports based on Dindo. That is no problem. So that brings us through the basics of using Dindo. I'm going to stop it there. If you have any further questions on what you've watched or something we haven't covered, please contact your local provider, depending on where you are in the world, or you can just contact us directly. If you go to dindo.co, all the contacts are there. Yeah, and we'll leave it there and have a good day. Cheers.